Roof tiling. We're going to look at the roof tiling section of the NHE Plus pricing sheet. Accurately calculating the costs for every element that is required when covering a roof is a complicated business to start with, but it's made even more difficult when a complex roof structure, like the one that we have on this job, is involved. But the NHE Plus really does do all the hard work for us. We've just arrived at the roof tiling section of the pricing sheet. We have not entered anything in at all. We'll just scroll down this section. Believe it or not, but basically everything is calculated for us. NHE Plus has used all of the information that we entered in the roof structure section and automatically calculated everything that we will need to cover our very complex roof. The most difficult thing that we need to do is choose the type of covering and just check over the details, fine-tuning them to our exact preferences if required. Let's take a look. Roof covering type. Selecting the type of covering for our roof couldn't be simpler. There are thousands of different roof covering types available, and the NHE Plus is preloaded with a very large variety of plain tiles, pan tiles, slates and sheets. Due to the sheer number of roof coverings that are available, it may be that the exact one that we need isn't listed. We are able to add further roof coverings of our own if the type that the job requires isn't in here. We're also able to adjust the guide prices that are provided too. First, we just need to specify the type of covering that our roof needs. We do this by clicking on the thumbnail picture at the top. We're going to be using a pan tile, so we'll click that one. OK, this opens a small form that contains all the pan tiles that are preloaded in the NHE Plus. The information for each tile is laid out in the same way. We've got the description here, then a visual reference. We can see the number of tiles required to cover a square metre and the cost per 1,000 tiles. This is so useful as it enables us to make an informed decision quickly. We'll select this one. We just click the Select button. The programme will use the cost and sizing details to work out all of the costs and quantities associated with using this tile. All of the covering options work in the same way. We just click the thumbnail, view the details of the preloaded options, click Select on the one that we want, and the programme will take care of the rest. Roof covering calculations. As we've seen, when we arrive at the roof tiling section of the pricing sheet, everything's already worked out for us. The programme uses all the information that we entered in the roof structure section to work out exactly what we'll need to cover the roof. We can see the measurements that the NHE Plus has automatically calculated for us. OK, so this is the area of roof that is to be covered. This is taking into account all of the roof sections that we've entered. We'll recall that the hip and valley roof is joining onto the new main roof section. As we tick the box and told the programme not to calculate roof covering for the area of the main roof section that the valley is joining to, that area will not be included in this total here. The number of coverings per square metre is here. The programme's automatically filled this in for us by using the information from the pan tile we've selected. We do have a blue box. If we're doing a job that involves reusing existing tiles, we would just enter the quantity of tiles that we would be reusing in here. The programme would then deduct this number of tiles from the quantity that needed to be purchased. The labour costs and hours wouldn't adjust, as the programme knows that these existing tiles still need to be fitted onto the roof. We're doing a complex roof that we've broken down into sections to enable us to accurately price it. But as we can see, the programme has automatically worked out the length in linear metres of the hips, valleys, ridge and verge. We can see the measurements here. The NHE Plus will use this information to accurately work out the roof covering items that will cover these areas of the roof. Regardless of the type of roof, the roof tiling section will always automatically calculate the length of any hips, valleys, ridge and verge where required. We do have various felt and batten options too. If we want to double felt and batten our roof, we just tick this box here. We can see that the quantities of the felt, or covering, and batten instantly increase to allow for this. Let's click the blue question mark. Here we have a visual reference, and the text explains how the programme calculates and allows for this. If we're doing a job that has sheeting, for example, sarking or insulation going over the rafters, we may want to allow for double batten on our roof. Again, it's really straightforward. Just tick this box, and the additional button will automatically work out. We can click this blue question mark for further information on exactly what the programme is calculating and view a visual reference too. Gang rates. The labour for our roof covering will be calculated based on the information that's in this gang rate form. Let's take a look. By default, it is set as a gang of 2 roof tilers and 1 labourer. We can change this if we want by using the yellow boxes here. So we can adjust the tradesperson and we can change the quantity of tradespeople too. We must remember to leave at least 1 tradesperson in here. Otherwise, the programme won't be able to calculate any labour costs, as no one will be allocated to carry out the work. The straightforward form below details exactly how the programme will use this information to work out the labour costs. We can see the rate for the roof tiler and we can see the rate for the labourer. By default, we've got 2 roof tilers and 1 labourer, so the programme will multiply the roof tiler rate by 2 and add on the labourer rate to give us the total rate for the gang that we can see here. There are 3 people in this gang. The 2 roof tilers are on a higher hourly rate than the labourer, and that is what they will be being paid. In the same way, the labourer will still be getting paid his lower rate. But because they're working together as a gang, and for the purposes of calculating accurately, the programme will divide the gang rate by the number of people in it. So the average cost of each gang member working for 1 hour will be this. We have to remember that this is not to be confused with the amount that each individual member of the gang will get paid. This is just the average cost of 1 man from this 3-man gang working for 1 hour on our job. Again, we can see that in a single day, because there are 3 of them working for 8 hours, this 3-man gang will be able to do 24 hours worth of work in a day. This links in with our work schedule, so even though the labour cost of covering the roof will always remain the same, unless of course we change the unit rate, the number of days allowed to complete it can be reduced if a skilled gang or individual is carrying out the work. The NHE Plus is intuitive, so regardless of how many or how few men we have doing this job, unless we change the unit rate for the item or task, the actual labour cost of doing this work will not change. But the hours that are allocated to the items and tasks will be reflective of the rate that the tradesperson or gang carrying them out charges. The rate that an individual or gang charges is reflective of their skill level and competence at getting the job done. So if the hourly rate of the individual or gang is high, the programme will automatically reduce the number of hours allowed for the item and tasks that they will be carrying out, as their rate indicates a high level of skill and speed. If the hourly rate of an individual or gang is low, then the programme will increase the number of hours allocated to the tasks that they'll be carrying out, allowing them more time to get the job done. The total amount that an individual or gang gets paid when the work is done will be the same, regardless of the hourly rate they charge, but a gang or individual charging a higher hourly rate will have less hours to get the work completed. The individual or gang charging the lower rate will be allocated more hours to get the job done. Let's look at an example of this in action. We'll focus on the roofing membrane. Okay, so we'll just go to the labour section of our quote library. First, we're going to look at the unit rate for our roofing membrane. It's here. This is the cost that will be allowed for the fitting of each metre square of our felt or breather membrane. Unless we adjust this in here, the actual costs of the labour for the fitting of it will not change. Now, we'll go to the trade section and we'll add in a super fast roof tiler. They charge £30 an hour. We'll also add in Harry. He's semi-retired now and not as quick as he used to be, so he charges £18 an hour. We can see here that we already have an apprentice. They're still learning and their hourly rate reflects this. We'll go back to the roof tiling sections. Now before we start adjusting the tradespeople in our gang, let's look at the totals in the roof covering. Okay, so we can see the labour costs for the laying of this felt or breather membrane here. As we've seen, this is calculated based on the unit rate in our roof tiling section of our labour library. Here are the hours that are being allowed. Also, let's look at the overall total for the labour in our roof tiling section. Okay, now let's change our gang. We're going to use 2 of our super fast roof tilers. See, the actual cost of the labour for our roof coverings does not change. Neither does the total labour cost for the roof tiling, but the number of hours allowed for this task and all the other tasks have been reduced. This is because the programme has divided the labour cost for this task and the other tasks by the hourly rate of our gang to give us the number of hours that will be allowed. OK, let's change this. We'll have Harry and an apprentice as our gang. Again, the labour cost for this item, or the overall cost of the labour, does not change. But as we can see, the number of hours has increased throughout to allow for the fact that if we have these two doing the work, due to their average hourly rate being lower, when the programme divides the labour cost by the average hourly rate, more hours are allowed. Another point to consider is this. Let's change this back to our two super-fast roof tilers. Here's the number of hours that they will have to get this roof done. Now, just to prove a point, let's put in a silly number. We'll up the number of our super-fast roof tilers in our gang to 7. This is important. As we can see, absolutely nothing changes. The cost of each of these men per hour is the same. They all have the same skill level, therefore the number of hours allocated remain exactly the same, along with the costs. If we did actually have 7 people doing this roof tiling, all it would mean is that the roof membrane task would be completed in about an hour. We know this as we just divide the number of hours allocated to this task by the number of people in the gang. We can tie ourselves up with gang rates, and we really have gone into the detail, but the most important thing to remember is that unless we change the actual unit rate for the items and tasks in our labour library, whatever the gang, whatever the rate they charge, the actual cost of the work will not be affected in any way. It's a common belief that if you double up the gang, you double up the cost. But this isn't correct. The actual amount of work that needs to be done will always remain the same, regardless of the number of people you have on it. The only thing that can change is the speed at which it gets completed. Further explanations about the way the programme calculates and uses gang rates can be found in the walls section of our pricing sheet. Roof covering items. Let's take a look at the roof covering items. Here's the roof covering, or breather membrane. We can adjust the type of material here in the drop-down menu and view the quantity required. Tile battens are next. Again, these have been automatically worked out for us. If we have selected a double battened option here, then these additional battens will be included in these figures. We can see the quantity of tiles that we'll need. The programme's looked at the area of roof and size of an individual tile and calculated this for us. We'll notice that the actual tile is in a white box. If we want to change this selection, we'll need to go back to the top of the roof covering section and adjust it in the yellow drop-down or by using the thumbnail pictures. The ridge is worked out for us here. The programme's looked at all the areas of roof we entered earlier and calculated the actual number of linear metres of ridge. We can see this here. It's then added on the wastage and worked out what we'll need to allow for our ridge. This same process has been applied to calculate the material requirements for our hips and valleys. We'll notice that on both the hips and valleys we do have a drop-down menu here. By default, our hips are set to have a tile covering, but we could switch this to lead by using the drop-down menu. The valleys also have a drop-down menu. By default, they're set to be lead, but we will see that if we click the drop-down, we could change this to tiles or a trough. Just to show you, let's select tiles. We need to tell the programme the type of tile we'll be using. Instantly, everything works out. Let's try that again with the trough. Just select it in the drop-down, choose the material, and it's all worked out. We're going to use lead, so we'll just change this back. We've got the option for ridge vents. We can view how these are calculated by clicking the red question mark. Every 3 metres of ridge, there will be a vent, but we can change this figure if we want. The undercoat is worked out. We can change the material if required. Hip irons have been calculated. We'll notice these are in a yellow box, so we may want to check the quantity that's been worked out for us. Bird comb fillers are here, but we do have the option to switch these off if they aren't needed. As we can see, all of the items for our roof covering are calculated for us. It's just a simple case of checking the details and fine-tuning them if required. Tile hanging. In the Walls, Cladding for Timber Frame Walls movie, we looked at how we could allow for tile hanging. In that movie, we saw that we just selected the Not Required option in the cladding type when we were in the Walls section, and when we got to the roof tiling section, we just switched the tile hanging option on. The programme would then automatically calculate the tiles required for us by using the dimensions of the timber frame wall that we'd entered. OK, so as we know, the external leaf of our walls is brick. Our walls don't require any tile hanging, but whatever the method of wall construction that is chosen, we can allow for the hanging of tiles on it if we wish. Let's switch the tile hanging on. OK, so the programme calculates the area of wall that will require tile hanging. We'll notice that this is in a yellow box, so we can change it if we want. But first, let's click this thumbnail. This form shows us the different sections of wall that we've entered already. We're also provided with a visual reference of what the wall that the tiles are to be hung on is constructed of, and the total area of that wall section. We're asked if we want to allow for tile hanging on the different sections of wall. We can see that the main wall area is ticked, and this is the area that the NHE Plus has put into the yellow box. We'll untick this and say we want tile hanging on just the first floor walls. Just tick the box, click Enter Details. OK, the programme is now calculating tile hanging for our first floor walls. The NHE Plus will have automatically deducted any openings from the area. As mentioned, the area of the tile hanging is in a yellow box, so if only certain areas of the wall require tile hanging, rather than a complete wall section or sections, we can just alter the area in this yellow box. All of the items and tasks for the tile hanging are here, and they will be calculated based on the area that's in this yellow box. OK, so most of the items we'll need are automatically worked out for us, but we do have a few blue boxes that will need our judgment. Let's start at the top and work our way down. We've got the membrane for the walls. We can see the quantity of rolls here. The battens, or studs, these are the upright timbers that will be fixed to the walls. We can change the centres in this picture if we want. Next are the battens for the top and bottom rows and noggins. We've got a row at the top and bottom, and one row of noggins. Again, we can change this if we want. Back on the pricing sheet, we do have the option to switch both of these options off, and not allow for them if required. Battens for round openings are here. This is automatically worked out for us based on the information we entered in the window and door frame section. The kicker batten is worked out. The tile batten is worked out too. The quantity required is dependent on the tile that is selected. So if we do adjust the tile, the quantity of tile batten needed will adjust accordingly. This is the tile that will be used. We can change this if we want in the drop-down menu. The programme works out the quantity for us by looking at the tile. The quantity of right and left-hand corner tile will require our judgment. We've chosen a tile that has 150mm cover, so we'll enter that we need 48 right-hand ones, as well as 48 left-hand ones. We'll allow 30 linear metres for our cheeks, and 1 roll of lead for our windows. All of the fixings for our tile hanging have been worked out. We can click on the red question marks, see how they've been calculated, and fine-tune the details if we want. We can allow for a cutter. Let's put in 1 day. We can control the way the quantity of discs needed is worked out by clicking this red question mark and setting the form to our preferences. OK, so working out the tile hanging is really quite straightforward. We just tick the box to switch it on, and most of it's calculated for us. We just check the details and complete any relevant blue boxes. We don't have any tile hanging on our job, so we will remove this from our pricing sheet and switch this section off. Roof flashing. We're going to look at the roof flashing subsection of the roof tiling section of our pricing sheet. We'll start at the top and work our way down. The first item is lead soakers. Let's click the question mark. The NHE Plus cleverly works the lead soaker requirements out for us. It looks at the roof structure we've entered and calculates soakers on any roofs that abut walls. The number of linear metres of soaker required for the roof structure we have entered is shown here. It is in a yellow box, so if we want we can change this. This number does not include overlaps. The length including overlaps is in this box here. We don't need to adjust this. The programme will automatically calculate this for us if any changes are made to the overlap setting or the number of linear metres of soakers that are required. The overlap allowance is here. Again, we can adjust this if we want. Here's the default setting for the length of each soaker. The blue text here tells us the quantity of lead soakers that will be required on our roof structure. If we change the length of the lead soaker to, say, 250mm, the text automatically changes and tells us the quantity of soakers that we will need based on this new length. Lead soakers are normally used on a plain tile or flat tile. We're using pan tiles, so we don't require lead soakers, so we just switch this option off by clicking here, and all of the costs are removed. The lead work abut walls is here. This is the lead work on top, so the step lead flashing. We do have the option to switch this off if it isn't needed. We do want this, so we'll leave it ticked. The leadwork for the top of lean-to is again automatically worked out based on the roof structure that we've entered. The leadwork for any back gullies does have a blue box, and it will require our judgment, as it's impossible for the programme to calculate this. And this is the same for any leadwork to chimneys. Again, we'd need to select the type of lead and enter the quantity required. We don't have a chimney, so we do not need to allow for these. We don't have a soil stack either, so we won't allow for any lead plates. But if they were required, we would just enter the quantity needed in here. If there is any leadwork that hasn't been accounted for elsewhere, then we can add it in. Just select the material and enter the quantity. We'll just click onto the question mark for the lead sealant. We can really drill into the detail of how this is being calculated. For our step lead flashing, the programme is working out the pointing based on the height of the course and the length of the step. We can adjust these if we want. If we click this thumbnail, we can see the breakdown of where the lead sealant for pointing is going to be used. We're also able to adjust the number of linear metres that a tube of sealant can cover. The sand is here. We can see the quantity required and the costs. If we click on the question mark, we can view exactly how this has been calculated. The programme accurately calculates the sand by looking at the sand requirements for each element of the roof individually, so the ridge, valleys, hips and verges. We can see how much sand will be required for each of these. If we click on any of the red question marks, we can adjust how the sand for each of them is being calculated. Next we've got the cement. We can change the mix if we want, just use the drop-down menu here. All of the plant is automatically worked out, so our mixer, cutter and cutting discs. We can click on any of the red question marks to fine-tune the details if required. If we click the fixings for battens question mark, we can see that the default setting is allowing one fixing every time a batten crosses over a rafter. We can change this if we want, along with the spacing. The blue text here tells us the exact number of fixings we'll need. Finally, we've got the fixings for tiles. Here we can see this is based on one fixing per tile. We can change this if we want, and we can adjust the type of fixing by using the drop-down menu. Extra row and totals. The roof tiling section does contain all of the common and not so common items and tasks that may be required. But if we need something that isn't listed, we do have the option to add in an extra row or rows. Just click the extra row button. We don't require an extra row, but adding one in is really straightforward. For more information on this, just click the blue info icon. The totals for the roof tiling section are here. We can see the breakdowns for the plant, materials, hours and labour. And the overall totals here. These totals are all cost. Markups and VAT are added when we get to the summary report. We do have the option to change this to a PC sum. To do this, we simply tick the box. We can view a snapshot of the roof tiling section by clicking the View Summary button. We'll be taken to the summary sheet. Here we can see the hours and totals. To return to the pricing sheet, click this button. We're taken back to the top of the roof tiling section.